Body to this meeting of the Local Pensions Board. As this will be my first meeting as chair, I hope everything will go very smoothly. Fingers crossed. Apologies for absence. Do we have any apologies for absence? No apologies. None? Right. Right, item 2, a roll call is to be taken, I presume. How do you do that?
I mean, bear in mind that the numbers of members, I think we're happy to just progress so that we know you can see everyone on the screen. You can see the ones in the room.
We don't have to bother with that then, do we? And then the declarations of interest, and I'll just read out. Members of the Fire and Rescue Authority are reminded their personal responsibility to declare both orally and in writing any personal and or prejudiced interest in respect of matters contained in this agenda in accordance with the provisions of the Local Government Act 2020. Yeah. The Fire and Rescue Authority standard orders and the Members' Code of Conduct. Have anybody got any declarations of interest? No?
No.
Right, thank you. Right, we'll move on to item number 4, which is Chairman's announcements, and I haven't got any at the moment. So now this item 5, I'm a bit confused about this, how we go about this with the minutes of the last meeting of the Pension Board that was held on Monday, the 31st of January. The people here, it's no new members present. They're all new members present, aren't they? Yeah. So
we've got Gareth that was obviously in the meeting.
Yeah. So
and David's just about to join.
So who will be signing these? Do I sign them as chair at the moment? Then it goes off to Steve.
As long as we get the minutes approved and seconded.
Okay.
Moved and seconded.
Who'd like to approve these minutes?
Happy to approve.
Who's going to second?
David, are you okay to second the move of the minutes of the last meeting?
Hello.
Dave, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
Dave, we're just on the minutes of the previous meeting. Obviously, the Fire and Rescue Authority members, there's all new membership on the board. Gareth just moved to approve the minutes. Are you happy to second that?
Yes, I'll second the minutes. And apologies for my late arrival. Technical issues this end.
Thanks, Dave.
That's fine. Right, we move on to reports for decisions, which is item number 6, scheme page reviews. I believe Alison was executive.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So, welcome members. By way of an introduction to this report, the background to this is that we've been looking at a review of our policies and procedures over the last few months. The scheme page reviews is a procedure that we would like to bring to this committee for review. For those of you who have an awareness of scheme page reviews, basically there are 2 scheme page arrangements, if you like. So there's a 2-track approach. The first is something called mandatory scheme pays. This applies where pension savings growth exceeds the HMRC tax limit during the tax year and the charge exceeds an amount of £2,000. The secondary is something called a voluntary scheme pays arrangement and applies where the charge is below the mandated limit of £2,000. In this instance, the individual can apply to the scheme fund to pay the charge and then have the amount recovered by a reduction in their individual pension when it comes into payment. The proposal in this report is to amend the scheme pays procedure with a focus in particular on the voluntary scheme pays arrangement. The mandatory scheme pays element is administered and governed essentially by our pensions administrator. So we're not proposing any changes to that arrangement. It's the voluntary scheme pays arrangement that we are proposing amendments to. The change from the current procedure, and I think probably this is the biggest change, if you look at the appendices. So Appendix 1 covers the current procedure, and Appendix 2 focuses on the proposals to change. And what you'll see in Appendix 2 is I've I've highlighted in red ink where the changes would happen. Basically, the biggest aspect, I think, is where what we're proposing is in the current arrangement, individuals have to make a donation of up to £2,000 to cover off the charge, whereas the change that we're proposing is that there's no contribution, if you like. Instead, the fund would pick up an arrangement of any charge under the amount of £2,000 and would charge it to the individual's pension. As I said, that would be reduced when the pension comes into payment when they eventually retire. So in terms of risks to individuals, the service of the pension fund, there are no risks associated with moving in this direction. We've had conversations with our pensions administrator around the admin side of this arrangement, and it seems to be a standard practice across most public sector schemes. So what we're now doing is moving towards good practice, and we've also done a look at the HMRC guidelines to check that we are in line with the government arrangements on tax. So that, I would say, is probably the biggest change. There are some minor tweaks throughout the procedure as well. The reason for bringing this to the LPB is that the LPB, although not a decision-making body, what we are asking you to do is make a decision on the direction of travel with a view to taking this report through to Fire Authority at its first meeting on the 11th of July. So we're looking for a decision from LPB members in terms of moving towards the arrangement set out in Appendix 2, with a view to Fire Authority making the ultimate decision, because Fire Authority have the delegation to make the decision on this, not the local pension board. So hopefully that, by way of an introduction, try to keep it simple. I know it's complex, but we are sort of changing things to kind of fit with what other FRSs and what other practices out there, but also it is in line with the tax, HMRC tax regulations. So I'll pause there, open up for questions, comments, points of clarification.
Does any members want any, raise any questions or clarifications?
Can I just ask one, please? You said that if they don't reach the threshold by the time they retire, the reduction in their pension, how does that fit with the workforce? So
this will probably mostly affect high earners who have an annual tax charge. And so what would happen is that if they have a tax charge of up to £2,000, that tax charge would be basically paid by the fund, but their annual pension would be reduced when they eventually retire. So I think in terms of magnitude, the numbers are not going to be a lot.
Okay, thank you.
Does anybody else want to raise?
Yeah, just a quick one. Thank you, Chair. Just more broadly, I suppose, what are we looking to achieve with the changes that are being made? And then secondly, with regard to the McLeod judgment, I think just seeking clarification that any alterations to pensions in the remedy period, once they're settled, they won't affect annual allowances. Specifically, if people's pensions achieve more value because of those changes. But there is the potential that some people may fall because of the revaluations into this category where they would have gone over the annual allowance. Have we got a plan to look at how we're going to deal with that, or is that still?
Yeah, I'm in with that. So the first part of your question, if I understand rightly, Gareth, is the current voluntary scheme pays procedure doesn't allow an individual that doesn't meet the mandatory scheme pays criteria to access the support from the fund unless the tax breach is more than £2,000.
Right.
So the review is actually for the voluntary section, is only improving it for the member and actually giving them access to something that at the moment, if their tax charge is less than 2,000, they would have to pay themselves. So from a service point of view, we're reviewing it to, if you like, make it easier and more accessible for those that maybe currently would have to pay a £2,000 charge themselves. But in addition to that, it does link into MacLeod, because where individuals now, either between now and October as part of immediate detriment or subsequently post that, take an option and a benefit that by retrospectively putting service back into their legacy scheme, they then breach the annual allowance. RCT, we're working with Ian's team, they do all the calculations and the reassessments for annual allowance. Because of the breach wouldn't have been identified in the correct financial year, they must have access to a voluntary scheme pays policy, which we already have, but now by reviewing the limit or even potentially taking it away, you know, those that will potentially breach that didn't before, because there will be some, can now access that without fear of penalty, if you like. And the way it works is the same as mandatory. The scheme pays the tax charge to HMRC, not the individual. And then at the point they crystallise their benefits, there's a specific accommodation factor, and it reduces their pension by a small amount every year. Does that help?
Yeah, that was excellent. And just one more question, if I can, Chair, just to help me further understand, is that, so anyone, how do I word it? It's so complex, isn't it?
Yeah.
So after the remedy
Yeah.
is put in place,
Yeah.
anyone who would have not breached the annual allowance if they had in the remedy period stayed on their legacy scheme,
Yeah.
will not now breach the annual allowance. It will only be people who would have breached the annual allowance if they had stayed
Yes.
on there.
Yes.
Okay, thank
Yes.
you.
So the principle being they never moved out of that scheme. So if they never moved out of that scheme and they would have hit it, the principle will be exactly the same rules
Got you.
applied.
Brilliant. Thank you.
And for those that have already breached and have more of a breach or less of a breach when the recalculations are done, RCT will work with us around putting that right as well.
I'm happy with that, yeah.
Yeah, and just for that, sorry. So a firefighter who was a firefighter and is still a firefighter now will not have breached when the remedy is put in place.
Nor if they wouldn't have had it anyway.
No, that's good. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chair.
Fine. Anybody else want to ask any questions? See anything? Right, we have got recommendations so that the members review the current procedure and make recommendations to the fire authority and scheme manager. Obviously, we've been through the appendix. We went through. Are members in agreement to this?
Yes.
I have a mover and a seconder. I'll second it then. If that's okay with everybody, lovely. Thank you very much. Thank you, Alison. Right, moving on to item number 7 now, which is the reports for information. It's to review the key performance, and I believe Ian Traylor is doing it.
Thank you, Chair. And for the purpose of new member.
He's frozen.
Oh no, okay.
You're back, Ian. Oh,
Am I back now?
yes.
Hello. Yes. Okay, apologies. Let's start again. My name's Ian Traylor. I'm the Service Director of Pensions, Procurement and Transactional Services at Rhondda Cynon Taf Council. And I come along to the Fire Pension Board acting as the pension administrator on behalf of your scheme. The purpose of the report and my attendance at board is to provide board with key performance indicators, service standards, and an update on some of the admin activity that we do on behalf of the South Wales Fire Scheme. If we move to and again, for the purpose of new members of board, these are performance templates that we provide to board on a quarterly basis, providing details of an ongoing details of the key service standards. So the standards down the left-hand side, standard measures of our key activities. So the first one there, percentage of refund of contributions processed within 10 days. They're all listed there. And throughout the year, I'd be providing an update of the performance of our service, meeting those standards that we've set out in our SL service level agreement with yourselves. On the right-hand column there, so when we look at again, page 30, it's 2021-22 performance, and down the right-hand side is the year-to-date actual against our performance there. So that top one, we were 100% against the target. The one below was 90%. So on some of those activities there, we didn't meet the full target that we attempt to do on your behalf, but some instances there are reasons why we're unable to meet those targets. So those templates there. So in Appendix 1, we provide that information. On page, moving to page 32, so that we have Scheme 90 there. This is now looking at the new year, the current year, 2022-23. And this is the one that I'll be updating throughout the year. So on our first details there, we have April and May's performance. If we move down to the third bullet there, we have preserved benefits processed within 10 days. And in our May's performance, that percentage was 50%. If we have a look at the comments column towards the end, it says 2 cases completed, 1 case was over target. So unfortunately, we didn't meet the target on that instance. And when I've checked with the team, you know, it was disappointing, that one, because there was a delay there that shouldn't have occurred through the authorization process, and which meant we went over target by 6 days. So instead of our 10-day turnaround that we anticipate for that type of process, it took us 16 days. So that one, unfortunately, not a good start, I guess, in terms of in terms of that process. But hopefully that gives you an indication of how we monitor our performance and how we deal with some of that activity then behind the scenes where we haven't met those targets, and where we review our processes and try and ensure that doesn't occur again. Moving down to page 34, again, that's providing on the other scheme, that's providing performance for the full year, again, as earlier, with cumulatives down the side. And then moving on to page 36, then we're looking again at this scheme, but it's our current scheme, current year again, 22-23. So we have April and May's performance. There was 1 case there which I've checked. So that was the preserved. So on page 37, preserved benefits into payment on retirement processed within 5 days. And in April there, we had 1 case in April, which again, unfortunately, we didn't meet the target, and we've had a look at that case, and it was linked to a special modified member technical case, So it did go over, unfortunately, on that one. The May one we did within target, hence our, I guess, our 50% moving forward. So again, as you know, just for members benefit, really, you know, we set these performance targets and we try to deliver clearly for you on those performance targets, but sometimes there are occasions where unfortunately we don't meet the targets that we try to achieve. In terms of the performance side, is there any, if I pause there, is there any questions on the performance side before I move to Appendix 2?
Anybody want that? No? Oh. Move on.
Okay.
So move on.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Moving on to Appendix 2. The following information is intended to provide members of Pension Board with an overview and an update on key admin activity. The table under member self-serve statistics. This is an online portal, again, for the benefit of new members. It's an online portal where firefighters are able to go on, update their information and nominations, and there's some calculators on there that they're able to look at. So that's the member self-service. And in terms of active membership, there's a high take up of this portal, which is really positive, really, in terms of usage by the fire service. They're able to view their annual benefit statements on that online portal as well. So it's a clear and a positive communication link there with the pension, with their pension details. In terms of scheme member complaints, this is just for board as well, that there are no formal complaints to report this period, and again, that's something we'd include there with some detail had there been one for discussion at boards. In terms of our key administration work, to note that the work has began on the 2022 annual benefit statement exercise. This is a requirement within the legislation, and these annual benefit statements have to be published prior to the 31st of August every year. So it is a requirement that this exercise is undertaken. So the work has commenced and will be produced accordingly prior to that date. Second bullet there is to note that the pension increase exercise has been completed. So those pensions in payment have been increased accordingly by the 3.1%, with active members' care accounts revalued at the 4.1%. We're working with Alison and her team around the immediate detriment cases, can continue to process those on behalf of South Wales Fire. And I guess, as mentioned earlier, and it doesn't go far away from our thoughts, it's the McLeod work and the ongoing issues around that that clearly is a concern for us all, and is something that we're working closely with Alison and the team to resolve any issues that we're able to on that front. Moving to page 39, this is to provide board with an indication of the scheme membership data. I guess prior to this current year, now we used to have scheme members across the number of schemes that were in place. These are to note now that how the transitions have moved across to the latest scheme, and those numbers indicated on the last three rows of the table there. So I'll pause there, Jen. Again, happy to take any questions or just move to the recommendations.
Anybody want to raise anything? No? No, there's no queries. Can you hear us?
Yes, thanks. Sorry, Chair. Yes, that's it from me. If there aren't any queries on that front, then it's just to note the reports. That's all.
Well, the recommendation to the members of the local pension board note the performance data included in Appendix 1 and attached to the report and the key accident in Appendix 2. Are we all agreed?
Agreed.
Yes. That's fine,
Yep,
thank you.
agreed.
Right, we move on to item number 8 now, which is the internal dispute resolution procedures, and I believe Alison will present this as well.
Thank you, Chair. Members may know that we have an internal dispute resolution procedure which resolves pension disputes. It's a structured procedure and it's one that Welsh Government are the sort of keeper of. So we follow a Welsh Government approach in terms of resolving disputes. Anyone can submit a dispute against a pension. I say anyone, there are some criteria for this. So a scheme member, prospective member, dependent, or any other person with an interest in the scheme and is dissatisfied by a decision made by the scheme manager can submit an IDRP, so a dispute resolution application. The pensions regulator talks about 6 key processes for LPBs, and for those new members, you'll hear more about the pensions regulator through our training sessions. But essentially, they talk about members of LPBs being aware of areas such as conflicts. They should know about the schemes and their roles. They should understand the risks associated with their particular role in the schemes. They should know about data and they should be aware of disputes. So that's the reason why we bring this report to the LPB, so that you are aware of the disputes that we receive as a scheme manager. So what I've done attached to the report itself is share the disputes that we've actioned or considered in the last financial year. So Appendix B captures detail of those decisions. And the reason I've captured them in this way is because also it's helpful from a learning perspective for the LPB. So the first dispute that we received was in December 2020, and it was a dispute querying the level of pension award submitted as a result of an ill health retirement that we processed. The outcome, so the decision summary, is that the level of award is calculated in accordance with the relevant regulations as part of the scheme. So stage 1 decision was upheld in the stage 2 process. The second dispute that we had was in relation to pension or pensionability of a particular contract that we hold in service. And again, what we did, we checked through the Blackburn principles, which talk about fire pensions relating to the role of the firefighter, and there are a couple of other requirements as part of the Blackburn principles. So again, just at stage 2, the stage 1 decision was upheld in that the pension or the contract itself did not attract a firefighter pension scheme in relation to that particular contract. So those are the 2 internal disputes that we had. We also had a pensions ombudsman determination around transferring of a pension into the firefighter pension scheme, and the pensions ombudsman upheld our service decision on that as well. So I haven't included in this because it's not part of the IDRP process as such, although it was included in our previous update to the previous board. So I just wanted to close that and share that additional information with you. So this will be an annual report that we share with the pension board, and again, the purpose is to share learning best practice and for the board to be aware of the disputes that we receive and the decisions, the outcome decisions of those disputes. So I'll pause there and check if there's any queries or questions.
Does anybody have any queries? No?
No.
Okay, then, like the recommendation is one, that the members note the procedures for resolving internal disputes, and two, that members note the factors considered and the IDRP procedure during period 1st of April 2021 to March, 31st of March 2022. Are we all in agreement with that?
Yeah.
Yes?
Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you, Alison. Right, we move on now to item number 9, which is the report on McLeod tapering.
Thank you.
And I think that's Alison again.
Thank you, Chair. So I'll start, and I'll probably draw in colleagues as I go through this.
Right.
But essentially, what I've done here is a regurgitation of a report that I've been using for LPB and Fire Authority to bring new members up to speed on the journey that we've been undertaken in, as we've already discussed, the McLeod remedy. And just to give you some background on McLeod itself, for new members' purposes, this all started back in 2011 when Lord Hutton, 2011 that was, Lord Hutton reviewed public sector pension schemes. As part of the review, there were various reforms recommended and implemented by government. One of those reforms was around transitioning people out of sort of legacy schemes, I guess, for want of a better word, into reformed, more modern pension schemes. One of those aspects was transitioning people across who were, well, one of the issues around transitioning was that it was age related. So people who were reaching their normal pension age of 55 by March 2022 were afforded full protection. So they were afforded full pensions protections based on existing legacy schemes. But there were another group of people who weren't in that position and were transitioned into new modern schemes based on their age. And that aspect was challenged in the courts, and the courts determined that amounted to age discrimination. So in 2018, so some 7 years later, the Court of Appeal ruled the transitional protection element of the 2015 reforms constituted unlawful age discrimination. So we're up to 2018 now. This was then described as the McLeod Sargent case. As a result of that challenge, the government was asked to correct the pension schemes and put right what was done wrong, essentially. So government then embarked on a consultation on how public sector pension schemes should look in the future. So that was the first step of reform. Then in February 2021, there was an employment appeal tribunal, which was led by the fire and rescue authorities across the UK, and it was challenging the equality aspects of the decision that was made previously. The appeal was based on the argument that the FRAs did not make the legislation that was found by the Court of Appeal to be discriminatory on the grounds of age, but of course they were bound to implement it because it was the law. The Employment Tribunal held that the FRAs, in their capacity as scheme managers, could have decided not to follow the discriminatory legislation. And in fact, they should have done so by refusing to treat firefighters having transferred into the 2015 reform schemes. So where that left FRA scheme managers is that to bring this up to current day, and decision that our fire authority made back last July was that on the basis of the legal outcomes of the employment tribunal, it is the gift of the scheme manager or the fire authority to make decisions on pensions. So we took a report to the Fire Authority in July 2021 with the recommendation that we proceed to correct the wrongdoing, if you like, and to put people, or to give people options so that they were put into the correct place upon retirement. Now it gets slightly more complicated at this point because the Home Office issued some guidance around that time and said, here's some guidance to help you process cases. And within a few months of the guidance being issued, it was withdrawn by the Home Office. However, in our discussions at Fire Authority in July, we determined that it was the right thing to do to continue to, or to at least start to process and give people choices upon retirement, should they fit the category of category 1 cases. And these are cases that have transitioned. So these are cases where the individual will have moved into the 2015 scheme, whereas actually, that they should be offered the opportunity of staying in the legacy scheme, which is what the court ruled. So Home Office issued the guidance, they later withdrew it. Fire Authority made the decision to offer category 1 cases 2 retirement options, one to retire on the basis of the transitioned employee, and the other one to put the individual back into their legacy scheme. We've gone back to Fire Authority, I think, on a couple of further occasions since that decision was made, just to reconfirm that decision on the basis of the Home Office guidance being withdrawn, and the decision stands. So we have, from October of last year, actively offered 2 retirement estimates to people who were identified as being in immediate detriment. So those who have transitioned, we have been offering them 2 retirement options. The category 2 cases that were described in the Home Office guidance are those that have already retired. In drawing up the legislation and regulations around pensions and correcting the transition arrangements, those regulations won't actually be finalised until at least probably October of next year. So we have made a decision as a scheme manager to process cases, but we know that at the point at which the confirmed regulations are issued, that we will have to reassess and relook at cases that we've already processed. All members who retire with those options are informed that that is the case, and they have the option of taking the legacy scheme arrangements, but with the caveat that we will have to review them when regulations are in place. So you can see the complex picture that I'm trying to build, and hopefully it's being built in a relatively straightforward and simple way, but it is very complex. What we have been trying to do along the journey is keep members informed of what we're trying to do. And Kim and the team have done a brilliant job in working with Welsh Government on member comms and putting out internal communications to members who are wanting to retire, but unsure of what the process is and what the offer would look like. We've also worked really well with our pension administrator, so Ian and his team. It has been a real team effort in working with and developing the retirement estimates. So there's been good governance and good engagement on that. We are also working with on an all Wales basis, so with colleagues in North Wales, FRS and Mid and West, and we're currently talking to the Government Actuaries Department around having an online calculator that will actually be a real good piece of kit for members wanting to retire and having an idea of what their pension would look like through this complex time. So what the report tries to do is just bring new members up to date on the journey, where we're currently at, what we're trying to do to keep members informed and engaged. And of course, we've been linking in with representative bodies, so Gareth, Mike and Steve, to keep them informed of the actions that we've been taking as well. The report has an appendix attached to it, which shows the number of cases that we've processed. So that is there for information. That's not the only number of cases we've processed, cases of retirement. These are the immediate detriment cases that we've processed. Of course, there are a number of other normal retirements that we've processed, and those are mainly people who are protected and wouldn't be classed as being an immediate detriment. So I'll pause there, but I'll just check if Kim or maybe Chris wanted to add anything, or anything that I've missed. I'll stop talking.
Very good job, Al.
Thank you.
And since these stats were provided to Al, I think we've had at least another 3 or 4 to add on top of the numbers that we're processing for ID as well. So they're frequent flyers now, every month they come through, so.
Anything to add?
Does anybody else want to add anything or ask any questions?
Yes, please. Thank you, Chair. Just thank you, Al, for that outline. It's complex, isn't it? Just to touch on where you outlined the potential of an online calculator,
Yes.
and to reinforce the need for that, as we are having quite a significant number of members who are coming up to retirement, and currently they can only access indicative figures or a forecast once they've put in their 3-month notice of retirement, which is meaning that they're making that decision potentially without, in my opinion, the right amount of information to make that a sound and informed decision. So the quicker we can move towards the availability of an online calculator so that they can get that information to make an informed decision, we'd really support.
Yeah.
And then just finally on the Cat 2s, we're still in a position where we're not processing them currently, is that correct?
Currently, yes.
Thank you.
Anybody else want to raise anything? Oh, thank you, Alison, for that. I don't know the process at all. Seems to be going on forever, doesn't it?
Yes, it is.
Yes. Well, the recommendation is that we note the content of the report, of which I think we have in depth. Everybody agreed with that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Hopefully we can move on now and try and sort it out.
Yes.
Fingers crossed. Right, we're on to item number 10, which is publications, updates and information, which I believe is a standard item. And Alison's going to take us through that.
Yeah, thank you, Tim. So I wasn't going to labour and go through each of the updates. They're there for you to have a read. We've actually printed these out this time for you to have a look at, but conscious there's a lot there. And in future, what we may do is just include a link for you to read them directly from the website, if that's okay. But I was going to highlight a couple of the publications that I have shared. What you've got in the pack is a monthly fire pensions bulletin, and this is issued by local government. And these generally come out towards the end or beginning of each month. You will see there's a flavour of the same topic in all of these. So McLeod is scattered throughout these bulletins, and there's various updates on revaluation of public sector pensions, and you know it's a factual update of what's going on in the pension world. But what I did want to flag, I mentioned the member comms that Kim and the team have been working with WashGov and others on, and towards the back of the suite of documents, I can just find the page 103, you'll see a suite of Q&As, so FAQs that relate to the McLeod Sergeant remedy. So that's probably quite useful reading for you as an LPB if you've got some time. I'd say have a look at those, because it does take you through the complexity and the different scenarios. The page prior to that, and the McLeod FAQs are Welsh scheme tailored. So there was a set of FAQs that went out to English FRSs. They were based on the English schemes, but you'll see the branding on the top of the FAQs there that reflects the Welsh FRSs. So these FAQs have been tailored to the Welsh schemes. On page 121, and this document is in the public domain already, but I thought, again, this is quite useful reading for you as an LPB. It sets out the complexity. So this is the scheme advisory board for England, represented through the Local Government Association and the Fire Brigades Union. So this is a joint letter to the Treasury and the Home Office around the complexity and the challenges that the FRSs are facing in navigating the cloud judgment, so the remedy. And it just queries, so it talks about, you know, how can we process cases where information has been withdrawn, and, you know, we need some very clear guidelines on processing cases. So I thought that was useful to include, and just to confirm it is in the public domain, so it's not a restricted document. But yeah, I won't go through each of those updates, but they're quite useful reading. It's useful to see what's going on in fire pensions world. And, you know, if there's anything of relevance, we will copy it into this section of the update for you to read and to just get a feel for what's going on. I'll just pause there.
Anybody want to raise anything? Some more reading there, isn't it?
Yes, sorry.
I think it's probably worthwhile saying, Chair, if we do add those links in, if there are any that we think are particularly pertinent, we'll
Yes,
kind of highlight them.
Yeah.
So if you want to pick and choose which you read, we'll kind of flag the ones that you definitely should and others you might be interested in.
There's a lot of coffee mornings, isn't there?
Yeah,
Every other week. Yeah, on a Tuesday morning.
Oh, have you finished with that now?
Yeah, I think so.
Say?
Yes.
But one of the recommendations that we review in the publications, which are shared for information awareness, which I think is a very good document. It will take a bit of time for everybody to get through it, I'm sure. But, thank you very much for that. Thank you for putting all that together. Right, on item 11 now, we've got the new members training session. Who's going to be dealing with that?
Yeah, so Kim and I will do a little bit of a double act. What we've got some hard copies, although members online will receive this digitally as well through this meeting. I can see the we've been sent to Councillor Norton, so they're on their way to the others. But I'll just pass these around. This is what we call in our members' handbook. And again, a hard copy normally with, oh, thanks. Normally we would send these electronically, but as we have the luxury of having a few of you in the room, I thought we'd give you a hard copy. Oh, would you?
Yeah.
Okay, brilliant. So what this document does is it shares with you some key information about your role as a member of the LPB. So, for example, the terms of reference for the LPB are in here. We've taken the liberty, Councillor Drake, to include a short intro with your name on it, just to say, you know, this is a key document. It sets out who are members of the board, terms of reference for the board, which is useful reading in terms of the role of the board, because I mentioned previously, we're not a decision-making body, we're an advisory body. So just useful to be aware of that. Included also in the document, I have tried to link to relevant pages on things like the pensions regulator site. So rather than including the code of practice, which is hundreds of pages long, I've put a link in there. Also, I've tried where I can to put information around. So the pensions regulator also includes a quick guide to public service boards. So I've included the text there so that you can have a read of that. What else have I got in here? Just running through it. the conflicts of interests at a glance. So again, just to share that, I mentioned some of the regulators' requirements around monitoring, managing, identifying issues, reviewing data. And then there's some links to the actual fire pension schemes, which are hundreds of pages long. So again, I've just put the links in there for you. Kim produced a scheme comparison for us, which I found really helpful. And I've put that in chapter 12, which is on page 23. It just gives a flavour of the differences between the schemes. We talked about the internal dispute resolution procedure. That's also in here. So chapter 13 includes the Welsh Government IDRP process. So you can see that in a bit more detail. And the documentation around that. And the actors, so we have to follow quite a structured process in terms of correspondence with the person submitting the dispute. Breaches of the law, chapter 14, so how we report those. And then into the training strategy. I'm just going to hand over to Kim now just to run through what we think you need to know as an LPB on your own training portfolio and sort of the time frames, because I think sometimes it's an online toolkit that we really do need you to complete, and we would urge you to do that sooner rather than later, because as with these things, if you don't do them when you're fresh in your mind and as you start your new role on the board, then it just doesn't get done. So I'll stop there and hand over to Kim so she can take you through some of that.
Okay, just going to do a verbal on this side of things. So as a member of this board, you do have a responsibility to have the knowledge and understanding of what your role on the board is, as well as what the board is here to do. As already mentioned, that it's not a decision-making board, and the key role really is all around governance. So making sure, if you like, that the scheme members and the administrators are actually administering the schemes correctly, appropriately and accurately. The TPR, so the pensions regulator, actually came up with this toolkit in 2015, which was when there was a requirement for public sector schemes to actually have a local pension board in place. So this concept, these boards have had to have been in place since 2015, and they've done a lot actually in coming up with suitable and appropriate toolkits. Okay, so as new members, so existing members will have already done, I know Gareth's done the training course, I think Dave King has done the training course, and other sitting members, but all new members are required to actually undertake the toolkit, because it will give you the skills and understanding to undertake your roles. Okay, so in your handbook, page 39 probably, there's a little sheet there just talks around, and I'll just briefly talk you through the Pension Regulator Public Service Toolkit Training Package, which is a bit of a mouthful. And for those of you who've got an electronic version of this, there are some useful links in this document that take you to the website and the area where you'll need to create an online account to do the training. And then there's some useful links at the bottom there, some quick guides to your personal development in this area through the TPR. And actually at the back, you will also see, and it's also been printed out, a training needs analysis template, which is worth you doing. And this fits into the format that the TPR toolkit is laid out in. It's worth you doing your training needs analysis maybe before you start your toolkit, so you can identify where your gaps are, and then maybe redo it once you've done the toolkit. The toolkit itself encompasses 7 main topic areas, and as we're public sector, there's an 8th as well. So the main topic areas are, and they're really easy to do when you work through them online. The biggest area is conflicts of interest, and there's a separate page here in the document about it. Then managing risk and internal controls, maintaining accurate member data, maintaining member contributions, providing information to members and others, resolving internal disputes, and again, we've had a little bit on that today, and reporting breaches of the law. Now, when you log in and create your account, each one of those little modules is set up separately, and you can do them over a period of time. It will save you progress as you go along. If you do the training session online, it's about 30 minutes or so they say, and then there's a little questionnaire at the end. Just work through, save each one separately. We would ask if you could try, if possible, and do this by the next meeting in October. So at least everybody has the required governance training in place. There's an additional one for public sector here at the bottom, and that's all to do with pension scams. It is a new module, still worth doing, and it's really helpful to understand the complexity of the pensions environment, and actually some of the, they're not all illegal, but immoral might be the best term for the pension scams that some people can fall foul of. Okay, and we do have a responsibility to our members to make sure that they're not actually being led down a path that would be detriment to them and their financial futures. I won't go into any detail on these modules. As you work through them, it will become evident. You read, you answer a few questions, there's a questionnaire at the end. When you've completed it all, it'll actually give you a nice little certificate just to prove you've done it. If you could all forward them in to me, that would be great. And we'll collect a training folder for all members. If you're not sure what to do, how to log on, or you've got some questions, I'm happy to be a point of contact for any of the TPR toolkit questions. In the past, I think Dave might have done, we've done like a group training session where members have maybe found it easier to come in and do it together, albeit you'd have to log on and do the record separately, and I'm more than happy to facilitate that if it makes it easier, I think it is a lot, but we have managed to get through it all in one day prior to now. Depends how many questions you have. Jen, yes, you did. Yeah, I got on a little bit. Oh, you've been. I would advise you maybe go back and just update yourself, perhaps. But yes, that's so you've got a fair idea on the. So that's really what we're asking. The first big ask before the next meeting is if you could do the TPR toolkit, and it gives you a really good base on the role of the board. And then when we come to the next meeting in October, Alice and I will probably pick another topic maybe. And if we've had your training needs analysis in, maybe we'll pick a topic or an obvious gap from that members feel that they would like some information on, or we could potentially deliver a session on, maybe the newer firefighter pension scheme, just an overview, something like that. But we do try and include something each session that just improves, if you like, people's awareness and guidance.
Oh, thank you for that. It says here about you need to create an account to assess the trade. Is that difficult to create an account?
No, it's an online account, and you just sign up to the website. So you use your fire service email address. You choose your own password, and then it will allow you in.
Thank you.
Okay, and it does mean then that if the TPR send out any messaging, it's going to the correct email address, because you don't want to be bombarded with your personal email address.
Just to check on that, obviously with the new members, since the move to Teams now, members are using their local authority email addresses, not fire authority emails.
Okay.
So is that still fine with that?
That's up to the members, yeah. If they're not being issued with fire emails at all, are they? No. Oh, yeah. Okay. That's the new rules. Then.
So do we have a choice? Does it go to the authority?
No, I was just checking if it had to be the authority, but no, it'll be your local authority email account then.
That'll be fine. No problem.
Okay.
Right. Oh, thank you for that. I got plenty of reading in front of me. I shouldn't say that. Oh, thank you very much for that.
That's okay.
And obviously we can get in touch with you
Yes.
if you've got any.
Yeah. Email is probably the best, because I'm not always in the office and I can come back to you then.
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you. Right then, we're moving on now to item number 12, which is the forward work programme, which I think is pretty straightforward. On page 115. And then item 13, to consider any items of business that the chairperson deems urgent. I've got nothing urgent. So you'll be pleased to know. So unless anybody's got any other queries or anything, I will close the meeting. And we're going to meet now on the 17th of October. Look forward to seeing you all and hope the sun will shine on us now for the next couple of weeks. We'll all have a nice summer holiday.
Chair.
Thank you. Fingers crossed.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, everybody, for your